delighted to say we're joined on the line now by Liverpool broadcaster Gareth Roberts. Gareth, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads. I'm a bit disappointed, I have to say. That's how I'm feeling.
Is the disappointment from the result exclusively, or are there aspects of the performance that are kind of making it a bit worse?
Yeah, both, really. I mean, to start the season with only 2 points out of 6, with Man City, of course, having a flawless start, which they always seem to have. That's disappointing. I think we all were thinking it was going to be a out the traps kind of season after what happened last season. Obviously, we won the 2 cups, but disappointed not to get one of the big ones. And you kind of thought, well, bit between the teeth, here we go. I think the injuries have obviously influenced the situation. 10 players not available last night. But yeah, it's just not quite there at the moment for me. It's not quite clicking, and that's a little bit of a concern. Nunez, I'm sure we're going to come on to talk about him and his daft actions last night. But, he scored a couple of goals for us, but you can tell he's new to the side, and you can tell his teammates are still struggling really for an understanding. I'm sure that'll come as the season goes on, but I'm looking at it currently and saying, well, Mo Salah looks a bit blunted at the moment for some reason, albeit he looks creative, but he doesn't look like he's going to score. And obviously we want him in situations where he will score. Obviously we're missing Sadio Mane. So yeah, it's a little bit of a concern. I do think it's going to get a lot better when players come back, and I think we saw that last night. As soon as you see Joe Gomez and Henderson on the pitch, Liverpool look a lot better side, and so instantly we're all turning to each other in the stands and saying, well, why weren't those two in the lineup from the very start? But Klopp explained later that with the pair of them, there'd been issues through the week, and they didn't trust them to play the 90 minutes, unfortunately.
What is holding Mo Salah back from exploding so far this season, do you think?
I just think the understanding's obviously different, isn't it? I mean, you talk about Liverpool's front three for the last however many years, and there was a real understanding there. You could throw a blanket over them at times in terms of how close they were to each other, in terms of how they played and how they linked up and things like that. You got Diaz, who's still relatively new to the side. Absolutely superb goal last night, by the way. You got Nunez, who's, that's his home debut for him last night. So, Salah's playing with different players all of a sudden. I think it's probably as simple as that. I don't feel like there's a huge issue there. If you're looking at his touch or the way he's taking players on at times, he's there and he looks on it and he looks fit, he looks ready. He signed his new contract, of course. I just think the dynamics of the side have changed a little bit at the moment, not helped as well by the midfield situation. The midfield is not the Liverpool's first choice midfield. It helps massively when Thiago's in the side. Unfortunately, you look at his track record, it always seems to be that he plays 50 to 60% of a season rather than the whole season. We're seeing that again. He's obviously out with an injury again. But when he returns, I think you see a bit of a sea change again in how Liverpool play, how they link up, how many times you're getting the likes of Salah on the ball. But yeah, I think positionally they're just all struggling a little bit with the new personnel, the new system, and of course missing players as well. So it's just, when I said before, it's just not clicking. It's just not fluid at the moment for me. It's a bit of a struggle. But what I would say is, you're not seeing any issue there with attitude. There's no hangover or anything like that, which I'm sure people will be writing about from last season. I don't think it's that. You saw the spirit last night at 10 men. We were absolutely brilliant with 10 men. And one of the things that I would question is, why weren't we that good with 11 men?
The hangover question was actually, I was coming to that next. It's such a weird, unquantifiable, intangible thing to talk about. Like, a team suffers a great disappointment like you do in the Champions League final. It's not that the spirit is affected next year. Just like, it just takes a little bit to get the belief back, or maybe it's like your heart is broken and you have to climb from the very bottom of the mountain all the way back up to the top again, and that just takes a little while for everybody to remember or to tap into what it was that got them there in the first place. So I get the point you're making, that it doesn't look like there's a physical hangover, but sometimes there's just a little bit of a mental, I have to do this work again.
Yeah. I mean, and one thing I would say about the vast majority of this group that we still got playing for Liverpool is they've experienced that, of course. I mean, missed out on the league title by a point last season. They've obviously done that once before when they got the 97 points. They've been beaten in a Champions League final before as well. And on those occasions, they bounced back and won in, straight away the following season. And so when I said before that, we expected as fans to see the same. That's why, really. And, you look at I still call it the Charity Shield. I'm sticking with it. If you look at the Charity Shield performance and beating Man City there, I think we all still felt the same way. We were like, right, we're ready for the season. Let's go. Fulham was then disappointing, of course. Last night was disappointing, of course. And you could be right. There could be a little bit of a mental funk around the whole situation about how it ended, because to end with the 2 cups was brilliant still. And, I will always champion Silverware, because you look at little kids' faces in that parade and, they weren't turning to each other and say, oh, these aren't the right cups. They just see cups and they see it wrapped in Liverpool red, and it's absolutely brilliant to see. But I think, of course, the actual players, the manager, they will have wanted the Champions League, they will have wanted the Premier League, and to come so close in both will have affected the mindset a little bit, I'm sure. It just needs to click for me. And, Sadio Mane is a miss. There's no two ways about that. I think, he scored more goals against Crystal Palace than anyone during his time at Liverpool. So, I'm sure Palace were glad that he wasn't on the pitch. And he was the type of player for me that when things aren't quite right, his sheer will sometimes could drag you through. He would score a goal from nowhere and off you would go. We got that a little bit, I thought, last night from Diaz, of course, with that absolutely brilliant goal where he's taken 5 or 6 of them out of the equation and then putting it in the corner. I think there's more to come from him. There's been a bit of a debate about can he finish, can he score enough goals and that kind of thing. I think he's partly answered that last night with that goal, and I think we can expect more from him. I think he looks absolutely brilliant, and we're only he's gonna keep on going up trajectory wise, and I think we'll get more goals from him, and that will be a big help.
It does feel like it was a much better performance from Liverpool without the goal scoring. So it's not like they're playing really badly. I think they didn't play very well against Fulham, in all honesty, but actually they played much better last night and just didn't score.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, it was utterly dominant in the first half, and you look at, even when you look back at the statistics from the game, I think there's like 24 shots from Liverpool and 10 of them were blocked. So that sort of tells you, the type of performance it was from Palace as well. There was a lot of last-ditch stuff, legs and bodies and stuff getting in the way of shots. Equally, though, Liverpool's finishing wasn't quite what it should be. Nunez, before he's sent off, should have scored. Salah probably looks at one and says he should have scored. Carvalho had one as well when he came on. He should have scored. So there was plenty of chances there, really. I mean, I'm sure Palace will say the same as well. Of course, they hit the post. But, that breakaway goal in the first half, they hadn't been in on a half. That was their first shot. I mean, and it was a well-executed goal. Eze, I think it is, does brilliant, doesn't he? Plays the ball through. And then Zaha's away, and there's no way, Nat Phillips is winning a foot race with Zaha. He's away, he's timed the offside trap brilliantly, and it's a great finish right into the corner. But it did feel a real sucker punch, that, and it was, you stood there thinking, is this one of those nights? And it kind of was, but, to at least get a point, I think that sort of saves the confidence a little bit, albeit that draws are no use to us, really. We all know that. I mentioned before 2 titles that we've came, or 2 title races where we've come so close. When you started to analyse it again at the end of the season, you did, of course, look at draws and say, well, we should have won there, we should have been beating Brentford, whatever it might have been. And we don't want that situation to develop again. So for me now, it's an absolute must-win to go to Old Trafford and win, get a bit of momentum going. We've got Bournemouth, Newcastle and Everton, I think it is, after that. All games, I would say, are winnable. I know there's going to be plenty of talk about it being Man United. There'll be plenty of talk about it being Everton as well, like there always is, because those are emotional games. But, I would back Liverpool 100% to be able to get on a run, put this behind them and get the season going in earnest now.
Yeah. Are there any concerns about the depth of the squad when the injuries have hit as early as this? And we don't know what Harvey Elliott's going to be just yet. And James Milner's obviously at the end of his career. I'm one of Milner's biggest fans, so I totally understand why he's in the team, and he's totally reliable, and you know exactly what you're going to get. But if you're comparing the squad with City, for example, they have players who probably are at their peak, as opposed to either coming to a peak or bubbling up or over their peak at this stage. Is there any concerns around the midfield squad depth at the moment?
Yeah, I would say so. I think in the summer, there's obviously been a lot of debate. I think Liverpool were We're linked with players as well, which seems to have got a little bit forgotten in the debate. They did seem to be in for, I'm going to embarrass myself trying to pronounce his name, but Chouameni, are we calling him? I'm really bad at pronunciation. But the French lad who goes to Real Madrid, Liverpool was strongly linked with him. It did seem like they went in for him and he simply chose Madrid over Liverpool. I think what you've got to do, I think there was players Liverpool wanted out, if I'm being honest with you. So I think they were looking to sell or move on. Chamberlain, I think there was even talk of Keita going at one point as well. And I think both of those players, if Liverpool had been able to shift them on, I think you maybe would have seen someone come in. Obviously now with the injuries, it's easy enough to say, well, they definitely should have brought someone else in. But we've seen already with the process, with this management, with these owners, with this coaching team, that they don't sort of settle for second best. They don't do the panic buying. They'll have a target. If they don't get the target, they'll keep the powder dry and they'll go for someone they really want, someone they think really improves the team. But I think the concerns over the midfield are absolutely fair enough. Thiago is absolutely world class for me. But, injury-wise, he does have a record which, like I said before, suggests that he will often only play 50 or 60% of a season. Milner, you mentioned, incredible fitness levels, but he's 36 years old and you don't expect him to be starting week in, week out. Henderson, I think, also in his 30s now, some question marks around him about what's his level on a regular basis now as well. And then Keita, Keita's fit, apparently. He was on the bench last night. So I would look at that and say, well, why is he not forced the manager's hand? Why is he not in the side last night? Is there a fitness issue or is it simply that he's not playing well enough? He's been someone for me. There's a huge debate around him. There always is. But he's still one that's flattered to deceive at Liverpool for me. He came with the big price tag, the big reputation, and he's not done it regularly enough. And I think he's in his last year now at Liverpool. So if there's any time to pull his finger out, it should be now. You mentioned Elliott. I thought he was great last night. I thought he was really impressive. I thought he was really impressive last season before the injury at Leeds United. And the lad's got a big future in the game, and that's why they've recently given him a new contract. But what I would say when you were comparing sides is there's a lot of injuries. I mentioned before there was 10 players unavailable last night for one reason or another. And I just think any squad where you get that rash of injuries in one go, it will affect what you're seeing ultimately. And I think when players are returning, when players are a bit fitter, hopefully Liverpool will be okay. But yeah, I was one of the ones that was banging the drum to say we should be in for someone. Conversations with my friends, I was saying I do think we should be looking to upgrade in midfield. I think Liverpool tried, but I don't think they could get who they wanted this summer, unfortunately.
Was the Darwin Nunez red card a bit of a red flag by any chance?
I don't know. I mean, he's only been sent off once before in his career, hasn't he? So, and he didn't get sent off at all at Benfica. So I would say no. I think he was getting wound up. He was getting frustrated. I think you could see that on the pitch on the night in terms of his performance. There's a couple of chances there, including the one where he's at the woodwork, where you think, well, you probably should have scored. I think I remember seeing his arms flapping a little bit when Palace scored, which again said something about his mindset. And then I think he was a bit naive. I think most people would agree he was naive in that he allowed himself to get wound up. He gets a little push in the back. He'd already had a little sort of backwards header butt at the player earlier on before the incident that he actually gets sent off for. So it did look like ultimately his head had gone a little bit. I do think in general, like although he's influenced games, he's scored goals, he's assisted a goal, all the rest of it, I do think he's looked a bit nervous so far. And that's understandable. I mean, all players are different, all people are different. And I think he's gone from being, at Benfica, settled in a system, scoring goals, everyone raving about him, to now being at a very different level in a different dressing room. He looks to me like someone who's desperate to impress, desperate to get the adulation and show that he was worth his price tag on all of those things. So, Klopp talked about, didn't he? He wants to have a sit down with him. He was leaving it last night, but he's going to sit down with him from now on in. And maybe some of that talk is about, like, you just need to calm down a little bit here. You need to get your head right. I don't know whether it's a red flag in terms of that kind of thing happening again. We do it's a bit of a stereotype, isn't it? But we do like the sort of Uruguayan spirit in general. And we talk about, when we watch their national side, about they get stuck in, they're a little bit aggressive. They combine that aggression with skill, and we love a bit of it. And obviously we had Suarez at Liverpool, and that was one of the attributes we loved about him as Liverpool fans. So it's just containing that and getting them to use that in the right way. I don't think I don't think you ever want to take that type of thing totally out of someone's game, because I think it adds to someone's game. I can remember similar conversations about Wayne Rooney going way back when, and I can remember Ferguson saying he didn't want to take that out of his game because that aggression wins you the ball, wins your headers, puts you in places where if you didn't have it, you might not be. So for me, it's not too much a concern. It was daft. It was very daft. It was very stupid. I've got no complaints whatsoever. It's a definite red card. And yeah, he just fell into the trap from the defender there, and he hopefully learned from it.
Like, there's obviously that sort of that fire in Darwin Nunez is obviously something that Klopp's going to channel into something positive as the season goes on. There's no doubt about it. But I was just thinking, when it did happen, I was like, when was the last time a player for Jurgen Klopp did get sent off for such a moment? Like, obviously there's been a couple of challenges here and there, a second yellow, professional foul, whatever it may be, but for something so daft, it felt like a very Liverpool under Klopp moment, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. It's the first one for violent conduct under Klopp's reign.
Is it? Literally the first one? Wow.
Yeah, for violent conduct. And it's the first red card, I think, since Alisson against Brighton. I think I'm right in saying.
Andy Robertson, I think, in the 2-2 with Spurs was the only one since then, yeah. Yeah,
you're right. You're spot on. I was thinking about Anfield. But you're right to say that in general, Liverpool have always stayed the right side of the line under Klopp, and I think he's been big on that. I can remember a question a long time ago from a journalist where they talked about aggression, and they talked about getting stuck in games and things like that. And he said then, early doors, that, while he wants them to run themselves into the ground and show their aggression that way in terms of the pressing, he wasn't a manager that was encouraging darker arts of the game, as we always call it. So, yeah, I would 100% say he's sitting down with him. He's having a big chat with him. He's saying, this isn't what we want. This isn't what we do. And there's been very few problem childs, full stop, at Liverpool since Klopp's been here. He doesn't seem to stand for it. It isn't something he wants. You go back to Mamadou Sakho, and the situation with him. He played up a little bit. Very soon he was out the door. And then, since then, I think it's in the recruitment. I don't want to repeat what he said just in case I'm not allowed to, but if you saw what Ryan Lowe said about his recruitment policy at Preston North End, he doesn't recruit certain types of people, shall we say. And I think Jurgen Klopp's got a similar policy. So, and any signs of doing something outside the box, something a bit different, something he doesn't want, I'm sure he'd be nipping that in the bud straight away.
I think it's the same as the All Blacks, is it?
No dickheads.
That's the one.
Yeah. There you go. Good question from one of our YouTube commenters, Powell74. Is it a bigger game for United or Liverpool next week? Liverpool win and Manchester United are bottom after 3 games. But if Manchester United win, then Liverpool will be below the worst Man United team in 50 years.
That's a very football fan thing to say, isn't it? And I totally get it. I mean, look, Man United, it's been awful for them, hasn't it? It's an awful start to the season. Questions about absolutely everything once again. And we all know that, beating Liverpool would be a huge stick and plaster over all of that. That would get them some huge credit in the bank. So, Liverpool have got to watch themselves in terms of that. But I would just say it's the same set of players. It's a different manager, but largely the same set of players. And, if the injuries clear up a little bit, I would be confident that we can go there and get a result. Perhaps not the result we got last season, which will still rank as one of the best things I've ever seen on a football pitch. But I would still be confident of us going there. And look, it's huge for both sides, I would say. I'm not one normally to jump on the tabloidies bandwagon and start saying, well, season over after 2 games or whatever. But I said right at the top to you that, dropping 4 points at this stage when you've lost 2 titles by a point, that is big. And we do know that, City can be almost flawless in a season. Will clock up ridiculous numbers. I've obviously spent a lot of money on a front man themselves who, no doubt he will click, and you could perhaps say he hasn't quite yet, but, it's in the post. So that is quite a scary thought, and it does make the game huge for both sides. So it's hard to say who it's bigger for. I mean, the Liverpool are in crisis line would be absolutely everywhere if Liverpool go to Old Trafford and lose. 3 games in, only 2 points on the board. I think Liverpool know that that's not acceptable and that's not what they'll be after. And I think Klopp will get them in the right place. He's been really good, I think, in general, last few years of sort of taking all the emotion out of situations like this. And I'm sure he'll do that again. Whereas, the likes of us and fans who go to game and all the rest of it, we'll all ramp it up and we'll all argue with each other on social media. But I'm sure behind the scenes, they'll remain calm and they'll prepare in the normal way. And the normal way is a way that's, brought back 90-odd point seasons 3 times out of 4 in the last 4 seasons. So, Liverpool have been doing a lot right, and I don't expect them to fall off a cliff anytime soon.
Last question for you then. As a Liverpool fan, is this the most worried you've been about the collection of talent that City have over the years? Are you scared more about this team being the best City team that we've seen?
I think I've always had that about them because, the resources they've got, the manager they've got, I'd love, as much as it's almost horrible to say, but I'd love a season where De Bruyne isn't there week in, week out. I wouldn't wish injury on anyone, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's annoying how good he is and how consistent he is and how he drives that side on season after season. And it's even more annoying that he's a Liverpool fan. So, you look at the lineup, you look at their best team, and of course you're worried about it, and you're worried about their consistency, and you're worried about how much teams in this league can lay a glove on them at times. But there's always been little chinks in the armour, and for all that we're 4 points behind already, we were 14 behind at one point last season, and then we took it to the wire. So, nothing's done, is it? And nothing's set in stone. And there's stuff there are still random aspects about football that I think keep us all interested. So, had Liverpool not been as good as they've been, City would have been running away with the title every year.
Yeah.
Liverpool have made it a competition. And there is still a randomness. Liverpool are experiencing randomness right now in terms of injuries, who gets the injuries, when they stack up, the time of the season that you play other sides and where they're at. There is a randomness still there. So I don't get... I look at them and I worry because I respect them and they're talented and they're a great football team with a great manager. But equally, I always think there's a randomness about seasons, and all Liverpool have got to do is stay in there and make sure they're up there. And if City do slip, if there is a problem, Liverpool have got to be there ready to take advantage.
Gareth, this is the first time we've had you on in a while. If anybody wants to keep up to date with your latest output, where's the best place to get you these days?
I guess just on Twitter at the moment. So I'm Robbo Heighton on Twitter. I'm no longer involved with the Anfield app these days. And I'm taking a little bit of time out at the moment. So I was pleased to get the invite from yourselves. If anyone's out there looking for someone to talk about Liverpool, and just keep up with me on Twitter. Anything that I will be doing, I'll be posting on there. So that's probably the best place.
Well, enjoy the break. It's well earned, and whatever comes next, we're all very keen to see, and we wish you the very best of luck with it. Thanks a million for joining us today, Gareth. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's Gareth Roberts here giving some thoughts on the Liverpool situation. There is a fear. It's like justifiably so that the City machine has already clicked into overdrive. If they were to have 3 centre backs get injured, they're not stacked. If the 2 first choice fullbacks were to get injured, they're not stacked. They will find a way. They can take Rodri back at right back if they need to.
But that's the level of injury crisis they need.
Yeah.
They need a full-blown crisis to derail them. Unless, like as he says, a De Bruyne or a Haaland goes down. I just think they're very specific players. Now, I know they won the first of their 2 in a row while De Bruyne was out for large parts of the season, but I think Gundogan was freakishly good during that time, and while he's still absolutely outstanding, he almost put the team on his back during a period when De Bruyne wasn't there. I still think that
Rodri has stepped up in the meantime, and so they could do
different
that
player though.
Yeah, I know, but they could do it again, is what I'm saying. Obviously, but
Rodri has become.
Gundogan is a different player from De Bruyne, and
but he can do the advanced.
He can fill in a little bit.
Rodri has been
or
sensational.
Or they just drop Foden into midfield more, and or
Grealish. And they've got stacks of options. That has always been the fear, though, hasn't it? The robot at the door, waiting to dominate and terminate all in front of them. And I think
now they've added the literal Terminator.
Yeah,
it's like